Welcome to the Racist War and Everything. We're coming to you again after only 7 days from our last episode. So
We're
we're on
being good
time.
boys.
We are. So you are listening now to episode 227 with Fenian and Nolsey, of course.
Hello.
Well, we thought we'd start off today with what I guess has been the hottest topic of debate for the past few days, and that is the amount of visas that we have been giving to refugees from the Gaza Strip. So the the opposition is making a big point of the fact that we have let in quite a lot since October 7. In fact, the latest numbers that I've had a look at 2,992 visas, mainly visitor 600 visas, that have been granted to holders of a Palestinian Authority travel document. So if you're from the occupied territories, but here, really we're just talking about Gaza.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, though, the Department of Home Affairs has also rejected 7,100 visa applications coming from Palestine since October 7 as well.
I wonder if there's another group of falafel munchers who are doing the same
I'll
thing.
get to that.
I'm
saving that. I'm saving that. But just to go through the other figures for the moment, of the 2,992 visas that have been given to these Palestinians, fewer than 1,500 of them have actually made the journey to Australia. Now, a few reasons for that. Sometimes they just have no way of getting here. Also, the border between Israel and Egypt, where a lot of them were crossing through, has been closed. In fact, that has been closed since May. And basically, the Israelis and the Egyptians are not letting anyone out. If you're in Gaza right now, you are pretty much stuck there. So, yeah, some people may have these visas, but they literally can't escape. So that's the issue. Now, putting that in a global context, we have actually taken in more Gazans since October 7 than any other country except two. One is Greece and one is Belgium. Now, Greece, they tend to be unusual and they seem to always take a lot of Middle Eastern refugees. And that might be why, Golden Dawn gets the support.
Yeah, that was one of the I don't know if this was like a geopolitical play back in the day that really backfired in their face. Yes, obviously leading to the rise of Golden Dawn. But the Greek government, when they were basically in turbo recession, in basically depression, were using migrants as a political football to basically get more bailouts from the EU.
Yeah. I remember that point in time, and it looked like Greece was going to be kicked out of the EU, like the first country to be kicked out. Yeah. No, I mean that's to do with a lot of factors. I mean, but do you know what the retirement age is in Greece?
Do they wrap?
It's 56.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everywhere else is at least 65. Anyway, getting sidetracked. The other country is Belgium. Look, I don't know. Belgium are sort of like, Belgian people anyway are very hipster-like. The ones I've met anyway tend to be a bit like that. So I don't know. But if you look at it on a per capita basis as well, yeah, we're letting in a hell of a lot. Now, what about what the coalition did, though? So Albo did point out that under the previous coalition government, they handed out over 1,000 visas to Palestinians from both the West Bank and Gaza. And Albanese pointed out that, Hamas has been in power in Gaza since 2006. So why is it that the coalition thought it was okay to let in Gazans back then, who may well have been sympathetic to Hamas, but not now? it's not like Hamas just suddenly became who they're known for on October 7. I'm pretty sure they existed and believed the same ideology back in 2006. So, what's the deal there? So, yeah, we do have to ask the question, why is it only now that the coalition brings this up? Why is it an issue now, but it wasn't back in 2006? Well, they will tell you, one of the reasons that they keep bringing up is that approximately 70% of Gazans support Hamas.
Yeah.
Or as Mike Burgess put it, rhetorical support for Hamas. Okay, but what? They didn't back then? I mean, I can accept this. I can accept that since the Israelis responded to October 7, that, okay, maybe support of Hamas has gone up a little bit since then. But so what? Obviously,
That
Hamas
wouldn't explain it.
They won elections since 2006. So fair to say they have had majority support since at least 2006. So that sympathy, or whatever you want to call it, coming from the everyday people of Gaza, has been there since 2006 at least. So I don't buy that reason.
Maybe it's runoff because, Hamas was a group, it was an organization, but after the executions and JIDF stunts of the late 90s, probably in 2006, it was a little bit more tamer and didn't just bite them right up the arsehole.
Okay, well, look, let's speculate on what this could be. All right, and I'll give the figure that you were alluding to before, Nolsey, which is, and I have pointed this out before, but we've got new figures on it now. So, as I said, 2,992 visas have been given to Gazans since October 7. But did you know that about 9,000, no, more than 9,000, have been issued?
I saw 15,000 this morning from the ABC News Spotlight.
How much?
15,000.
15,000. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just quickly check the date on this article I'm reading from.
That may have been just general Israeli travel included as well, but yeah. Because just remember, Israelis fucking fly in and fly out of this country every single fucking day.
Oh, sure, yeah. But okay, why is it that all of a sudden we've had this spike? So look, that the figure I had of 9,000, that would be a figure 3 times as much as what we're doing for Gazans. If you're saying 15,000, well, that's 5 times as much. Why have we got this enormously lopsided figure that's going on? And by the way, why is no one talking about this? This is just something.
There's a lot of belly aching. Yeah, look up hashtag Palestine in regards to Ozpol, and it's just a whole bunch of right-wing oids just being like, oh God, national security threat. Labor's opening us up to terrorism. And it's just maybe, but also.
Yeah. So look, I want to point out, this is not me saying I support the Gazans coming in, by the way.
Fuck no.
Right? I don't. Okay. Whether it is these 3,000 or the 1,000 that came in under the coalition, I don't support any of them. Okay. What I'm saying is, something obviously has to be going on within the current political context that is making this all of a sudden such a hot button issue. Why weren't the coalition talking about this before? Why weren't they talking about it before May, when Gazans were still able to flee the country? Why is it just now? So, look, dare I say that this is perhaps very much connected also with the amount of Israelis that are coming here. Now, I just wanted to quickly play, just before the show, I was watching James Patterson. Saw him interviewed by Chris Kenny. He's the Shadow Home Affairs minister. And I will just play a quick little clip here.
Are supportive of Hamas and their atrocities on the 7th, are supportive of Hamas, shows that up to 70% of Gaza residents are supportive of Hamas and their atrocities on the 7th of October. We don't want anyone with attitudes like that coming into our country at a time of record anti-Semitism and threatened social cohesion.
Okay, so the last part of what he said there, we don't want anyone like that coming in at a time of record anti-Semitism and threatened social cohesion. That there, I think, is the answer. Okay, the Jewish lobby in Australia has been getting more nervous day by day. It obviously they were spooked on October 7 itself, and then on October 9 by the reactions to it, particularly over in Sydney. But ever since then, it's been a very slow, gradual. They're just getting more and more scared the whole time. And also, when you've got things like the Muslim vote, these Muslim candidates who want to threaten Labor seats and get into Parliament, when you've also got them, falsely afraid of the Greens and how they may be taking more inner city seats come the next election. Basically, I think that if perhaps not fearing for their physical safety, but certainly fearing for their grip on power that they have here in Australia, that seems to them to be increasingly precarious because they seem to only really find real support with old boomers or, or exes like Chris Kenny.
But again, like the actual grassroots, again, excluding the fucking population, the section of the population that was exposed to lead and fuel, is either apathetic or pro-Palestine. That's one of the things. And I think it was actually very telling that even in the same interview, they said that, hey, look, there was actually logistical problems for people coming over from Palestine. Like there's straight up logistical problems. So they could have just issued the same number of fucking visas to Palestinians they damn well fucking knew had no logistical ability to enter this country and just done like, oh, be happy, clap, clap. Again, like, oh, we were fair and even. And then, just physically not have them show up. Jews are so fucking scared of like reprisals inside a Western country that they weren't even like, willing to feign equality of issuing in this case.
Yeah, but I mean, if you've got an extra 3,000 Palestinians here, that means you've got an extra 3,000 like militant activists against you. And, these people will raise family, they will eventually gain voting rights, etc. And Jews see that as an ever-increasing threat to their grip on power and influence in Australia, I believe. And, that's why even though Jews are the ones who, contributed enormously to mass immigration in the West, we always know about the golems that they create. And, perhaps the biggest one they have let loose is the Islamic one, because all the people who are moving in to these Western countries don't like Jews.
Well, look, just historically for Ashkenazim, when they freak out the most, it's when a direct enemy of the previous country they're in follows them to their new country.
Yeah,
like they weren't afraid of classist rhetoric following them over the border from Poland when they were like exploitative like usurers and etc. They weren't afraid of like anti-usury language. They weren't afraid of like, I don't know, like fucking pro-secular or anti-secular language, following them. But if it's an ethnicity that targets them, knows them as the problem, knows them as a thing, can identify them solely, then it's a fucking problem.
Yeah, and I mean, a great example is Mark Liebler, perhaps the prime architect of the failed Aboriginal voice. He was always there supporting left-wing civil rights causes in Australia. But then, ever since 9/11 and that, he's really changed his tune in terms of Muslim immigration. He was all for it before. He was all for open borders. Once he saw a threat to the Jewish population, his position changed. And
it's weird. It's almost like he actually has some principles and ideals that he isn't exactly being like, so forward with.
Yeah. But also, just to also talk about the 9,000, you reckon 15,000 now visas that have been issued to Israelis since October 7. It seems to me that perhaps there is a concerted effort to get more Jews into the country to basically be a counterweight. And, this is one of the areas of division among Jews in terms of strategy. It's like, do we need more Jews in Israel to fight the Arabs, or do we need more Jews in Western countries so that we can set up an appropriate lobby and make sure Western countries continue to back Israel? This is one of the points that Jews disagree on. But here, look, I mean, I'm only just speculating. Obviously, I have no direct evidence of this. But it seems to me that Australian Jews, influential Australian Jews, have been telling people back in Israel, you need to move over here because we have this growing Muslim threat in this country. And we need power in numbers. So we need more of you to come over.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you exactly what the shot would be.
Crazy idea, crazy theory.
I can tell you exactly what the shot would be if I knew where these people were coming from. Because if they're coming from Haifa, it's all about warfare, lobbying, and politics. If they're coming from Haifa, if they're coming from Jerusalem or the settler areas, it's literally just about having more bodies and hands to maybe like literally repel or deal with or mitigate the population damage caused by stochastic terrorism enacted on them by Palestinians.
Yeah,
that's it.
I mean, I'd love to know like where exactly these 15,000 Israelis have been moving to. I strongly
you can probably guess.
Sydney, huh?
Yeah, I was going to say you can probably guess.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be Melbourne and Sydney, maybe Brisbane as well. And, maybe they're moving into the seat of McNamara to make sure the Greens don't steal that from Labor in the next election.
Now, they're moving into the true seat of power in Australia. Perth.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're ruled by Queen Syrian girl.
Yes.
I can imagine her running for the Muslim vote.
That'd be fucking hilarious. I'd love to see that.
It would be. Okay.
I love it because eventually some journalist will slip up and post that false story of her getting double teamed in a fucking Domino's bathroom.
All right. So look, now, just to comment on like whether or not rhetorical support for Hamas, this is how Mike Burgess described it, is enough to actually warrant a security concern. Well, sure, it is. I mean, any kind of terrorist sympathy, I guess, is a cause for concern when you're talking about a foreign entity. I don't think that should be the deciding criteria. Of course, I just think if you're white, you're all right, and if you're not, sorry,
fuck off.
Yeah. But look, Albo actually did refer to the ASIO boss's words in Parliament when he was asked about the screening process that goes on in terms of whether to grant a visa or not. So here's what he said in Parliament. He said, I will refer to what the ASIO Director General himself has said. If they have been issued with a visa, they've gone through the process. They're referred to my organisation and ASIO does its thing. So that's what Mike Burgess said on Insiders about 2 weeks ago, I think. Now, there was something that Albo left out of that quote. So here it is. Part of the process is where criteria are hit, they refer to my organisation and ASIO does its thing. So what he was saying there was when you meet particular criteria, that is bad criteria, some kind of red flag.
Naughty boyism.
Yeah, to say that, you're a threat, you're a danger, then they're referred to ASIO and they, conduct further checks, investigations, etc. So that is a little different to the way Albo put it, he was trying to say that every single applicant is put through this rigorous process, but apparently not. And the same would go for the thousands of Israelis who've come in as well. Either that, or it's just a rubber stamp for them.
Just to remind everyone that the time that Mossad chased a dude through Forest Chase with fucking M16 M16 4A1s or M16A1s or whatever the fuck, literally like American standard issue fucking rifle. They were cleared by security, by the way. They were just completely cleared. They're just straight up Mossad agents, just completely cleared, allowed to literally chase someone through a civilian area with fucking like fucking military rifles drawn. I'm not saying military rifle is like, oh my god, the AR is a weapon of war. No, I'm quite literally saying standard issue military rifle. I'm not talking about the AR civilian thing. I'm not fucking going on that. But no, foreign intelligence was allowed to draw weapons in a fucking civilian area while chasing someone who wasn't actually under arrest or any charge in our country. They're just allowed to do that, by the way. Completely cleared, by the way, by the same organization you're hearing criteria.
Well, look, like I think I said last week, Jewish tactics are usually via means of subversion and, finding design flaws within a system. But physical acts of terrorism do occur by Jewish hands as well. I mean, never heard of the Jewish Defense League, who had like multiple plots to blow up mosques in America. You mentioned Mossad. I mean, Mossad to this day conducting assassinations around the world, and I would not put it past them to take out some influential sheikh or someone in Australia. I certainly put it past them. So surely then, by that standard, we should be subjecting Israelis to the same kind of vigorous screening process.
Well, again, some of our Jewish politicians, they openly hire Black Cube for their security, for private events and, certain government events. Black Cube is quite literally a security organization made out of ex-Mossad. And by the way, there's no such thing as ex-intelligence. So yeah, it's like, our politicians are openly hiring members of ex-members, quote unquote, ex-members of a foreign intelligence organization.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind.
Now, in terms of how this is going to pan out for Dutton at the ballot box, we got some data. So this comes from the 2021 census. So if we look at the current electoral boundaries, there are 24 marginal seats where the percentage of people whose parents were born in Australia is above the national figure, and the percentage of Muslims living in the electorate is below the corresponding number. In contrast to that, there are only 6 marginal seats where there are lower percentages of people with both parents born in Australia and a higher percentage of Muslims than the nation as a whole.
Yeah.
Of those 6 seats, the coalition is a contender in 5, one of which is Banks, the southern Sydney seat of Liberal MP David Coleman, who is not Jewish, by the way. So he told The Australian he supported Mr. Dutton's call to temporarily ban entrance in Gaza, despite nearly 7% of voters in his seat being Muslim. Okay, so what they're saying there is that if you're a Muslim, you are very unlikely to vote for the coalition. If you have got 2 parents born overseas, you're also very unlikely to vote for the coalition. So basically what they're saying is the coalition is just continuing to piss off the same people and piss off electorates, say, with large Muslim populations who would never vote for them anyway. So they're not really risking anything here. Talking about that seat, David Coleman's seat of Banks, 7% are Muslim, but that is nowhere near enough to kind of swing the vote against the Libs. So the Libs are playing it safe here. Because dare I say that 7% in banks didn't vote coalition the last election anyway. So it just doesn't matter.
No change on graph here, big boss.
Okay, now I had forgotten that the cat empire existed. I'm very disappointed I was reminded that they're still around. But they did actually make the news this week over the whole Gaza situation. So this originated with the Melbourne Sydney Orchestra, the MSO. One of their composers, he's a piano player, Connor Donetto. He played a 5-minute solo piano piece, and he dedicated it to the journalists of Gaza. Now, this is because of so the piece was introduced with a statement in which he mentioned the targeted assassinations of prominent journalists as they were traveling in marked press vehicles or wearing their press jackets. Okay,
which has happened a lot. I've seen
and by the way, 113 journalists are believed to have been killed since October 7. The IDF, of course, said that they do not target journalists.
Fenian, what is greater? I'm conflicted. What is greater, my hate for Israel or my hate for journalists?
Well, it depends what side they're on. But despite the fact they've said that they do not target journalists, they cannot guarantee their safety. No, just like aid workers, right? Okay, so they didn't like this. The Jewish lobby, that is, did not like this. So the Melbourne Sydney Orchestra sent out an email the other night to people who went and saw that performance. And they said that they do not condone the use of its stage as a platform for expressing personal views, and they apologize for any offense and distress that may have been caused by those comments.
So wait, your stage isn't, like a platform for activism? I imagine I can find a whole bunch of gay shit even before they legalize gay shit in this country. I imagine I can find a whole bunch of niche little issues. Why are you picking on this specific leftist issue?
Yeah. So that performance was pulled. The MSO pulled that performance. But then later on, they admitted that they made an error in pulling that performance. And this seemed to be because, well, the musicians within the MSO didn't like this. They thought that was real overkill, just removing the performance altogether. Now, in terms of how this relates to the Cat Empire, well, the Cat Empire was scheduled to play a number of shows with the MSO over the next few weeks, I believe, around Australia. So they've said that for now, the concerts are postponed, and they are basically kind of in talks with the MSO as to whether or not these performances will go ahead at a later date. So far, we don't have any date or any guarantee that that will happen. And they basically said that they were upset with the fact that, this was an attack on freedom of speech and artistic expression. So, I don't know. I guess fair to say the Cat Empire are on side Palestine, given that. But yeah, that's how that whole debacle transpired. So the Cat Empire do like really happy music, and I hate that. Music is supposed to be either brutal or brooding. It's not.
Yeah, that's. Can you tell what is Finian's favorite shirt color?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. I've just always hated happy sounding music. It's awful. So anyway, yeah, we'll keep you posted on that. Okay. All right, now over to the University of Melbourne. So even though we don't really have encampments now, or we sort of do. I mean, but
Yeah.
you can walk through them. Like business as usual is going on at the universities, even though you still might find people like stuck to in a tent or something. But anyway, it has turned out that the University of Melbourne have been using CCTV, surveillance technology, Wi-Fi, and Wi-Fi location data to basically track down the pro-Palestinian students who were involved in that 10-day occupation of a campus building. So, those directly involved in the encampment, as it's called.
I wonder where they got such sophisticated technology. You actually need something called a stingray to do that kind of stuff. And I actually believe that it's actually against our telecommunication laws to actually do this, to actually pull that kind of information, unless you're a state body.
Right. So look, these students had to front misconduct hearings. And yeah, they're the questions that everyone is raising here. It's like, what the hell? You were using surveillance technology and Wi-Fi location data to be able to track down individuals, which, I assume that meant they were able to kind of get into their phones and stuff and, at the very least kind of track where they were going. So, yeah, that has definitely raised great privacy concerns. And the matter's actually been referred to Privacy and Data Protection Commissioner Rachel Dixon. I question whether that's a job title that should actually exist. Nonetheless, it has been referred to her to see, if any privacy laws were broken here. Not that I typically have sympathy for students like that. But yeah, I mean, to be subject to that much monitoring and surveillance is, wow, that's a shitload. And
that's a biggie.
You need, you need the resources to be able to do that. That stuff is not cheap, to be able to round up all those.
The device that I'm talking about is about $25,000.
What did you say it was called?
Stingray. It's a thing that basically middlemans a whole bunch of wireless networks and can basically decrypt and pull XMF information real time. Kyber Mace wouldn't have a better description of this, but that's layman's terms. That's what it does. It gets in between you and the network and then pulls everything you're fucking sending and receiving, which for smart devices, is a lot of personal information and a lot of GPS data.
Right. Okay. One more story on Israel and Gaza. And that is, this man's made a few appearances on our show before. Tayeh. He is the guy who owns that burger franchise over east called Purgatory. Don't think it exists here in WA. So this is the guy who is known, obviously not just for being the owner of this restaurant chain, but also as a pro-Palestinian activist. And he's spoken at a number of rallies preceding October 7, I believe. He's always kind of been involved in this stuff. I'm not sure if he's actually Palestinian himself. He may well be. He's definitely Arabic and he's definitely Muslim. You just have to take a look at him to know that. But anyway, he says he is not going to be running for parliament. So he's not threatening anyone's seat in Western Sydney or something. Instead, he wants to go for mayor at a council election. He hasn't actually picked which one yet. He has said that he would run as an independent, no surprise there. But he said he could cherry pick where he wanted to run because his chain of restaurants span the entire state, which is he's in New South Wales, isn't he? I believe.
I'll find out quickly.
Google that for me, Jamie, please. So,
How do you spell his name?
Hash, Hash, Tayeh, Tayeh. Jeez, I'll give you the notes, Nolsey. Don't you have that in front of you? You're supposed to be following along.
I followed on a different fucking device. Hashtag
Look, it must be
Instagram
New South
entrepreneur.
Wales because they're talking
It is
about
New South Wales, yeah.
because they're talking about the October local government elections, and whoa, we've got a story on that today. The epic.
Oh my god, it's got 13,000 followers on Instagram, and it's all just anti-Israel stuff, which is okay.
Yeah, he's big,
based?
and also remember, mysteriously, one of his burger joints went up in flames. And that was when the police immediately released a statement saying that it was not politically connected. Remember that? It's like, huh? You barely fucking put out the flames. And
oh no, trust me. And like, if it was any other instance, it'd be like, oh yes, far right, terrorism, blah blah blah, etc. They wouldn't say like, oh, it was done by far right people, but they'll mention it. They'll put it in the thing if there was like a mosque that caught fire, and then turned out later it was like some illegal laundromat that was connected to it. But yeah, they'll at least like try and blame someone for it.
Right, and I mean that there is an example of what was more than likely Jewish terrorism in Australia. Okay, it does happen. It fucking does happen, and I'm sure that Mr. Tayeh would agree with me there.
No, but the Burgatory that burnt down was in Caulfield in Victoria.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it does exist. It exists interstate then. All right. Yeah.
Yes,
but
it does.
he's running in New South Wales. Somewhere in New South Wales. He hasn't decided.
Yeah, they're basically it got to, like it's a satanic themed burger joint, blah blah blah. But like I imagine because even before the beginning of this year, like even before January, there's like pictures of him on his Instagram showing Palestinian flag posters at the beginning of this year. So yeah, imagine that's why he got fucking targeted.
Oh, definitely. He was actually arrested at some event where they accused him of like stirring up hatred against Jews. I don't think anything stuck though. Like if he was charged, those charges were dropped. So yeah, I mean he's one of these guys. He's definitely the definition of an activist. He's always out there. Doing this stuff. So, he's well known. He's obviously, we can see he's got a big social media following. So definitely this guy would have a chance to be able to mobilize voters. And it's particularly it's easier in a council as well because voting is not compulsory. So all you have to do is just sort of whip up your more dedicated supporters. And that means they're basically the only ones who turn up and vote on election day because most people just don't care.
I wonder where I've heard this playbook before.
Yeah, well, you're talking about Stephen Wells.
Yes,
he got quoted. Stephen Wells got quoted in an ABC article, and the quote.
Oh yeah,
no, but the quote it actually came from me. It was when we interviewed him on XYZ Live. There was a point in the show because I think we spent most of that show talking about Drag Queen Story Hour because we've been to a protest. And I said that a country with a high degree of criminality will have a high degree of homosexuality. That was one of the things that ABC actually quoted.
I remember that,
But they said that Stephen Wells said it. And I was like, why? Hey. I fucking said that.
Pay me my due. You're that image of the dude pointing to his palm and looking outraged.
The one time
he got pulled up in like Australia's biggest like Nazi terrorist list a little bit ago.
Oh, I know he often. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of the fact that he's out and proud. Here's his real name, his real face, his real profile. We don't do that. All right. Let's move on to immigration. All right. So there was a big protest outside Tony Burke's office in Sydney, Western Sydney, of course. His seat, which of course is under threat now, because you have an independent Muslim who's running against him in the next election, is around 30% Muslim. So you can see why a lot of people would be attracted to an event like this. So what this was people who are still waiting in immigration limbo on temporary visas, and they have to basically just keep, renewing their temporary visa or finding another temporary visa or whatever, because they're ineligible for some sort of permanent residence. Now, early last year, the government did tweak the laws so that 19,000 refugees became eligible to apply for permanent residency in Australia. We definitely talked about that at the time. However, you still have approximately 10,000 people who are stuck in limbo for various reasons. And yeah, most of them are refugees, asylum seekers, or applied for protection visas, whatever. So yeah, it was quite a rowdy protest. These are the very same people who could, if given permanent residency and voting rights, would ironically vote against Tony Burke. So
yeah,
I don't know if this might be a way of, maybe the Albanese government will think this is a way of appeasing the Muslim vote. However, I just don't think there's any appeasing them at this point. Unless they do a total 180 on their position on Gaza and Israel, I really can't see them winning back the voters that have broken away and who want to back, people like the guy running the Purgatory. What was funny?
Probably unironically win the Muslim vote in this country just by going out and saying "fuck Israel." Also, I supported price drop on chickpeas, flatbread, and lamb.
Yeah, but also it was funny. I was looking on Telegram. People were posting videos where journalists were trying to interview these people who were camped outside Tony Burke's office protesting, and a lot of the time they were unable to speak to them because they didn't speak English, or their English was just so bad, And it's like, well, come on, you're here, and you're saying that you've been stranded here for years, and you want to live here permanently, and you can't even speak English? You've obviously not made any attempt to integrate or become an Australian in any sense of the word.
I'd like to integrate them with my mulching machine.
Yet that doesn't stop you having this fucking entitlement mentality to be citizens in our country.
Oh, and by the way, praises to Hassan and his boys for going down and having at least a screaming match with them.
Or did they go down there?
Yeah,
to the same protest.
To the ones, just to the protest where they were standing outside the thing, being like, "We want PR, we want PR."
Oh.
We've been in limbo for too long. Give us PR.
Okay.
It wasn't just like people in limbo too. It was actually just like international students who rocked up yesterday, being like, "Actually, no, just give us permanent residency."
Yeah, because they don't want to keep re-enrolling in their courses or whatever, and continuing, faking the fact that they're actually working a full-time job. I guess all that paperwork and everything is a bit too difficult. You'd rather just get that magic visa so you can work here. Get fucked. This is the thing. Like, these are people who really are like politically activated and go out there for stuff like that. And what are they fighting for? They're fighting for access to white people.
Yep.
Like what is left of white Australia is what they're after. That's what they're fighting for, and they feel entitled to it.
Dude, they're after that last little half teaspoon of go-go at the end of the tube, man.
Right. And I mean, unfortunately,
trust me, buddy, they're ready to suck.
For everyone, it is running out.
Yep.
All right.
White people are going to become the ultra luxury good of the future.
Okay, now, it turns out that fewer than 500 visas have been granted under a scheme that Labor brought in, I think in 2022. This was designed to fast track foreign workers to work in aged care. So, this isn't working. So, we know that there is certainly a massive shortage of staff in aged care. The government actually did give them a whopping 15% pay rise. Arguably you could still say they're not paid enough, but nonetheless, that was a huge pay rise. But I remember Albanese actually admitted before the 22 election that they would, even though they wanted to source locally, or that's what they told us, that they wanted local labour, they were really going to be left with no choice but to import aged care workers. And, as we know, they would mainly come from the Philippines. They still do, but, it's increasingly from Africa now as well, where you've basically got violent black women looking after your grandmother.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's not a pretty situation. So anyway, they've, in this effort to actually get the kind of skilled workers into Australia that are in demand, it has been a complete failure. Anyway, now I'm not complaining about this. The thing I just kind of find funny about it is, the business lobby, or those who talk about immigration from an economic point of view. Last week we had the story of where the Master Builders Association said that they wanted to import an extra 500,000 tradespeople, I should say, to deal with the housing crisis. It seems, though, that when you do actually try to target those particular skilled sectors, you still can't get them. You still end up with just unskilled hordes coming over. And that's all immigration really was. It's not really about getting the skilled workers over that you need. It's about getting unskilled ones that you can pay peanuts to. And this is an example of that. Even though we're making a concerted effort to get more of these aged care workers, they still can't do it. And I mean, the next step after that would actually to just be lower the standards. Like if you don't quite qualify, we'll let you in, we'll give you the job anyway. And that's when it gets really dangerous, because then all of those unskilled hordes that you've been letting in, they're the ones working at your nursing home. And they're the ones, assaulting your fucking grandmother and stealing her jewelry.
Yeah, those are the Sudanese that got recorded, put on the elder abuse port, and then never fucking seen.
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember there was some expose on, I think it was Four Corners or something, where they would throw old people onto their beds and then laugh at it. And it was always like Filipinos who were doing it. Okay. So, poor old Andrew Giles, he is not immigration minister anymore. However, he still gets picked on for his time in the role. So, the coalition is now going as far to say that Andrew Giles has breached the ministerial code of conduct and should resign from the front bench. So, I mean, before they just asked him to resign as immigration minister, or for Albo to sack him. Now they're saying he should actually just quit the outer ministry altogether. Now, what's this based on? They're saying that he misled Parliament, which, of course, yes, is a breach of the ministerial code. So when he answered a question in question time last year, he said that all detainees required to be released into the community as a result of the NZYQ court decision, basically when indefinite immigration was made illegal, was made null and void. He said that all of those people who were released were on bridging visas. Well, guess what? That turns out not to be true. Dan Tayeh, the shadow immigration minister, obtained documents under freedom of information laws, and it shows that 83 detainees had been released into the community without bridging visas, and that Andrew Giles was aware of that. Either that, or he just didn't read the paperwork properly or wasn't briefed on it properly. So that actually means that you had 83 people completely unlawful out in the community. Yeah.
Gotta love it, though, you know?
So there we go. Yeah. Poor Andrew Giles still can't escape the legacy that he has left.
I mean, to be fair, he really fucking shouldn't. This should, like, hang over his head every single day. All the fucking victims of his dumb bullshit. I mean, like, literally, like, wasn't it, like, 15 victims within the first 2 days?
Yeah, there was a lot. The majority of them, of the ones who are criminals, have gone on to reoffend. One thing to point out, though, is that does include breaching curfew conditions.
Yes.
So, you know, that's, you know, pretty minor crime. Nonetheless, that can still land you a year in jail. So by that measure, it's serious. Okay, now, well, we've still got, we've got two more examples of that here. We seem to get more of these every week. So this was an immigration detainee released under that decision. He was arrested in Sydney after breaching bail conditions. This was a 28-year-old Afghan man. We've also got a 36-year-old man from Sudan. Yep. So he's been remanded in custody as just 2 days after being released on bail by the Brisbane Magistrates Court. And that was also for breaching curfew conditions. So, yeah, we just keep getting more of these. All right. Okay, now this story just goes to show how much money there is in this whole industry, in immigration as a whole. So this is a law firm called Zarifi Lawyers. I don't know if it echoes.
Oh, yeah.
I did Google it and I really couldn't find much information on them. Anyway, this is a law firm that champions the causes of people who are facing deportation. So they've been making a ton of money over representing these people and taking them to court, fighting to have their visa reinstated. Now, they were rebuked by the AAT, Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and they said that they were failing to inform various clients that they had no hope whatsoever of staying in Australia. And the main reason for that, believe it or not, is to do with Direction 110. So that was the new direction that Andrew Giles put in place, saying that the AAT must consider community safety first and foremost when it comes to someone who has had their visa cancelled due to character concerns. In other words, a criminal record. So,
yeah,
we remember that that was very different from Direction 99, which basically said the opposite. And that meant the AAT were reinstating visas. So, after there was a public uproar, Andrew Giles had to revoke that and introduced...
because, like, oh my God, just, you know about legal terminology. Connection to the community. How nebulous is that?
Right, that was it.
Country.
The connection to the community should be given priority over their criminal record. That's what it was, which was a joke. So anyway, despite the fact now that it is harder for people to win back a visa that has been cancelled, you do have law firms like Zarifi Lawyers, and it's not just them. Okay, this is just like one example, who are preying on these people and just taking all of their money in legal expenses, representing them in court, and knowing that it is absolutely futile, that they're going to lose anyway. So yeah, they're just one of the law firms that have been called out on this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, just go have a look at, see how much like migration agents earn, immigration lawyers. We've got a law firm here in WA called Esther & Sol. Do you know who runs them?
Esther and Sol.
Do you know Voyager, the band?
Yeah.
You know how they were the ones that were in Eurovision. That was Australia's like entrant. Was Voyager. You remember that? In the last Eurovision? Yeah. So
fucking weird ones.
Their front man, his name is Daniel Estrin. He is a Jewish immigration lawyer, and he is the partner for Esther & Sol, which is the biggest like immigration law firm in WA. And the other guy is Jewish as well.
Oh, there we
Coincidence?
go. Surely. Except coincidences are spelled starting off with Cohen. Anyway.
That's right. Coincidence. That's right. I first heard that from David Duke, actually, that joke.
Well, that's been duly noted.
Okay. Last story on immigration. I'd not heard of this person before, so I had to Google them because they use the they, them pronouns. So this is Masha Gessen. So this is a journalist who writes in both English and Russian. It is a non-binary unit, which is why I think it's a bloke, though. I'm pretty sure. Like when I have a look at the photo of this monstrosity of a person, but also like if you have a look at that photo, Nolsey, you can see it in the link there.
Yeah.
Look at the fucking schnoz on that. This is a Russian Jew through and through. And yes, I did smash.
Oh yeah.
I confirmed it. But anyway, we've got the Festival of Dangerous Ideas that we have in Sydney and Melbourne. It's actually a festival of very tame ideas. It's just kind of fake edginess. But anyway, Masha Gessen was scheduled to speak there. But Masha Gessen is an LGBT activist from Russia and has been effectively exiled from Russia, has not lived there for years. And what the Russian government has done is in absentia charged he, she, they, whatever, with various crimes.
Demons.
Yeah. So because there is that foreign criminal record that exists, that comes up as like a red flag for our immigration services in Australia. And so poor old Masha has not been granted a visa yet, a visitor visa, a very simple one to get to come over. And basically they're blaming, the Russian government for its persecution that is actually transcending state boundaries. Yeah. So.
Oh no.
But I just had to kind of laugh at that. Okay. All right. So on to the economy. So just quickly on Rex Airlines that collapsed. The federal government has announced that those who have bought tickets for regional flights to use Rex's services are going to have their flights guaranteed. So even if they have been cancelled completely and they can't actually do them anymore, then they'll get a full refund. So all is not lost if you are a Rex customer. Going to Tasmania, and I'm sorry, we're going to this isn't going to be the only time we shit on Tasmania in this episode. I'm sorry for that. But apparently their financial position is on track to become the worst, worse than that of any other state or territory over the next 3 years. So there was, this study that was done by Sol Eslake, an independent economist, looking at the state's finances and debt. And it revealed that net debt is currently $3.5 billion. However, the projected debt would hit $16 billion by 2035. And at that time, the state would be paying $750 million in interest payments per year, which is actually more than the total cost of the Macquarie Point Stadium. That's the AFL stadium that they're planning to build.
Yeah. Yes, the one where they polled the public and the public said, hey, can we get better hospitals, better infrastructure? We've got an aging population. Can we get a better ambulance service and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Maybe more affordable housing to attract more of the youth population here. And then they said, we know exactly what you cunts want. A football stadium.
Yeah, they got to prepare for the Tasmanian Devils. A new AFL team that won't actually compete until 2027. I don't know why it takes that long. But anyway.
You think you could just muster up a handful of fucking retards, or you think you could just get access to the draft and just import players from other states or your own state if you're producing them, which fucking Tasmania is definitely not. The Tasmanian Devils are definitely going to be one of those cases of, import only. Yeah.
So look, those figures as I read out, may not be as bad as say what debt is in Victoria. But remember, Tasmania is way smaller than Victoria. So on a per capita basis, that is actually pretty bad. And, that's why they continue to take a disproportionate amount of GST money and the like, because, they're sort of a state of leaners rather than lifters, you should say. All right, and last story in the economy. A new study has found that $9.6 billion was lost in economic productivity due to long COVID in 2022. Long COVID meaning I don't know, I guess you're sicker longer than a week or so if you've got COVID. A lot of people complain about this. I don't know. I mean, I've come across many people. I've never had it myself, but people who get extended flu symptoms. They'll be away from work for a few days, but then when they come back, they still kind of got it. They're still sniffling and
because there's damage, there's physical damage done to the system. The virus may actually be gone, but there might be some lingering damage that needs to be repaired. Long COVID, so they're saying it's neurological. Yeah, they'll say it's neurological and blah blah blah, and I'm thinking fibromyalgia again. I literally had a look at a handful of cases in person of people who were diagnosed with long COVID. I'm just you're just not eating correctly. In two of them, this is anecdotal, granted. I only did 2 years of medicine, but I'm just it's you're anemic. Literally, your skin is paper thin, and you look like a dead person. And you run out, it's not you've got neurological damage. You fucking struggle to breathe. You get dizzy if you sit up from the couch too fast. I'm this isn't long COVID. A doctor gave you this diagnosis while completely overlooking all the other symptoms that say Jesus fucking Christ, go boil some rusty nails in a pot and drink it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it could also just be people overstressed or whatever. I've noticed in myself that I can get cold-like symptoms if I'm sleep deprived, for example. I've had that a few times. So yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if you're just not looking after yourself, not getting enough sleep, you're not eating properly, you're not exercising, you're not getting enough sunlight, socializing, whatever it might be, you can kind of bring on mild cold and flu symptoms, or you can extend a cold or flu that you already have, or COVID or whatever. So yeah. Yeah, it's just unfortunate that COVID is just like an addition. Like we didn't need an extra disease, but anyway.
You're getting it.
Yeah. Okay, now would you believe we have some figures that are somewhat positive in terms of the property market, in particular for renting. So, so these figures are coming from CoreLogic. Shows national rent growth only increased by an average of 0.1% in the 12 months to July, compared with highs of nearly 40% at its peak. I kind of doubt that. 0.1, that's an incredibly low amount. But anyway, that's what it says. And basically what they're predicting is that while rent prices won't come down, they won't continue, for the time being anyway, to go up at the astronomical rates that we've become accustomed to. So I guess that is a very, very small white pill to take from that. And they're saying that they're attributing to that to less overseas migration. So, as we know, that's because of less students, people coming over on student 500 visas. That has actually reduced by around about 24%. So you see that? It can have an effect. Now, that obviously is like nowhere near.
I was told that wouldn't happen.
It's a drop in the ocean. But yeah, it shouldn't become any surprise that we get these slightly positive figures after we have, slightly cut net migration. Okay.
It's almost like, we got this weird crystal ball where we can use common fucking sense to figure out a fucking solution to a very goddamned obvious problem, Finian.
Okay, now the coalition, they're they're trying to remind people that they're the party of home ownership, or at least that's how they like to be seen. And this is actually what. Well, yeah, that's what they're really about, yeah. But no, when it comes to people actually owning their own home, having something they can call their own, I'm going to say that this is actually one area where I think that the coalition does slightly distinguish itself from Labor. Things like the first homeowners grant, you can call that middle class welfare or whatever you want, but that has helped a hell of a lot of people get their first home. And it's typically been the coalition who have supported measures like that. And of course, we mentioned that bloody housing block that they were planning to build in, I think it was in Brisbane. And, the Greens were all for it so long as there was rent controls. But the coalition said no. Like, you're talking about a place for permanent renters. And we don't like that. We want people to only be temporary renters and to be able to save up enough money and actually own one of those apartments or a house down the line. So I like that, at least rhetorically. I think that's a good thing. And I think that would get them a lot of votes, actually. So anyway, how are they planning to do that? No word yet on the first home buyers grant, but they're saying that they want to make getting a loan easier. So, people getting knocked back for things like, your deposit's not big enough, you've got a bad credit rating and stuff like that. The coalition wants to make it so that, those things can be mitigated somehow. Now, they haven't announced anything specific here. They did say that they're going to examine things like negative gearing and, all the rest. But what's really missing here is that, well, okay, you still can't separate this from immigration, okay?
No, you can't.
It's no surprise.
I know I talked about this like the past handful of times in the show, but have you seen the new levels of insane copes where they're trying to blame like housing prices on like greedy building companies aren't building fast enough? Is like, my brother in Christ, we just had like 2 years of watching them collapse one by one. Oh my God, it's these greedy land developers which are like, not developing land. It's like it literally costs them money day by day not to develop land. They want the capital in their hands right now as fast as humanly possible. That's how they make the most money.
Yeah, it tends to be like the Green Left who make those arguments. And I mean, Adam Vant basically said that that the stage 3 tax cuts were to blame. He said that giving those tax cuts to wealthy property owners encouraged them to put up rent prices. I'm like, what? I was like, how does that work? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Okay. Oh, right. Here, this story. Why the hell have I got this under housing? Okay. Oh wait, yes, of course, because this you can use this to apply for a lease, but not just that. All right, so this is what's been called a one-stop shop for proving your identity. Okay, so it would be called Trust Exchange. You would use a QR code. And this is, by the way, is very much based on that, check-in technology that we had during COVID. Well, God, remember that where people would fucking check in like everywhere they went. And also, tap and pay systems.
I remember that one time we went to that one fucking bar and we all just kind of looked at each other like, we're just going to check in. And then, well, we made a correct and moral decision that had the community's right interests in mind. I'm going to leave it there.
I ever checked in.
Okay, yeah, we didn't check in. We looked at each other and just kept walking.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but yeah, I mean, I don't remember checking in a single time. I don't remember installing that app on my phone, for that matter. Anyway.
That was a fucking wild time.
It was. Anyway, this QR code would be linked to your MyGov profile. That, of course, has your personal details. And, if this plan goes ahead, it would say also include things like your rental history, your credit rating, your photo. And if you want, you could include things like your resume if you want to then go and apply for jobs as well. Now,
why the fuck is half of that any of the government's goddamn fucking business?
Well, it's not. So look, here's how they're selling it. Obviously, one point is, convenience. You don't have to go through and fill out all the cumbersome paperwork and everything to apply for a lease or for a job or whatever. But they're also saying that, when you do apply for a lease or something, businesses can hold on to your documents, your sensitive documents. And they say, well, those documents can be targeted by cyber criminals. It's like, whoa, hold on. What? And my MyGov account can't be? Are you fucking kidding me? If they're holding on to documents, first of all, if they're physical, there's no way cyber criminals are getting near those. Second of all, when cyber criminals do go after databases to get people's personal info, they tend to go for big companies, like Optus or something, or they go for government.
Yep.
They do plenty of hacking in the government systems. So if all of your information is there under that one account and they manage to get into it, well, that's it. All your identity
is fucked forever.
Yeah. And, this is not a new idea either. Bob Hawke wanted to introduce, obviously not a QR code, but he did want to have a one-stop shop, ID check where all of your information would be stored. But there was such a backlash at the time, they scrapped the idea. Nowadays, I think you would be more likely to do it. And I guess it's just because people are so used to, doing things like tap and go paying for things. That they just kind of think, what's the point? Google knows where I'm going, so it doesn't matter if someone else accesses all my info.
Well, yeah, no, it's people are just more digitally integrated these days to the point where you can, and a lot of people say like, oh, glasses make you a cyborg, or glasses make you transhuman, or using a hammer makes you transhuman. Well, no, using a smartphone or any kind of like personal electronic device makes you a cyborg, because cyborg, coming from cybernetic, means the integration of two complex machines, or two complex systems. There's your complex organic system, that being you, and there's the complex electrical system. People have literally just become, quite honestly, by definition, cyborgs over the past 2 decades, really.
Wow, that's an interesting dystopian way of looking at it, I guess.
Yes. Oh, dude, have you ever known me to have like a really well thought out, smart opinion that isn't fucking horrific?
No, but I've said for a while that, like, when you're a kid and you watch those movies that have, that like dystopian futures, like RoboCop or something, now that I'm in my 30s, I kind of think I'm in that future.
You're
the
in
very
like a
fact
worse
that we
version
have,
of it.
yeah, perhaps, yeah. I think we are basically living in that, that dystopian cyberpunk age of urban
We don't live
decay.
in the cyberpunk future. We live in the fucking cyberspunk future.
Yeah, that's sad. Okay, let's move on to industrial relations. So, the government wanted to put this to a vote. That is the bill to place the CFMEU into administration, meaning that you have bureaucrats effectively running the show and looking over their books to find irregularities, etc. Obviously, the union did not like this. They never wanted it. They vowed to fight it in court. So the next step is to actually just introduce legislation to make it the law that this has to happen. Now, the coalition said that they were not going to pass this. They wanted amendments added to the bill that included a minimum 3-year administration period, a legislative ban on donations, political donations coming from the CFMEU, and a requirement that the administrator appear before Senate estimates to be questioned by coalition senators. Labor did not want to commit to any of those amendments, so they've kind of gone back to the drawing board here. The Greens oppose this as well, although for different reasons. I think they actually just don't want the CFMEU to go into administration. The coalition clearly do, but they just want a heavier-handed version of it. So it's unclear what's going to happen with this. The Minister, Murray Watt, is saying that he hopes to have the legislation back before the Parliament by next week. And during that time, I assume that they're going to either have to strike a deal with the Greens or the coalition on this. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, particularly if they'll ban CFMEU political donations.
Okay, so for starters, aside from banning CFMEU political donations, that's going to be a little pawn on the table. But like, what the fuck else is there in the negotiating table out from like staged actual conversation / spite move / whatever the fuck they can put on Sunrise at fucking 7 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that the coalition basically thinks that, the CFMEU has been knocked down and they can kick the man while he's down. They kind of see this as the perfect opportunity to bleed the CFMEU as much as they possibly can. But the building industry is actually very upset about this. They're basically saying that they can't afford to waste any more time with this, and the CFMEU needs to go into administration. Or the 4 divisions anyway. 4 branches: Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia. WA is off the hook. How about that?
They don't really exist here, that's why.
Oh, no, they do. They do.
Yeah. I was going to say, I've seen them once, and that was a blue-haired woman like fucking a year and a bit ago.
Well, look, they don't... The glory days of Kevin Reynolds and Joe McDonald are kind of gone. We remember the fat guys who wore suspenders. You know, they were kind of famous Australia-wide for a while. Because during that era, the WA branch was known to be more militant than Victoria. Hard to believe now, you know, with the likes of John Setka and that, but that was the case back then. But yeah, just in terms of like connections to organised crime and that, the WA branch actually came up clean. So yeah, that's why they'll continue to operate independently. But yeah, like the Master Builders Association, Civil Contractors Federation, etc., all these building groups are saying to the coalition, no, this isn't worth it, you know, pushing for these extra amendments. We just need to put them into administration now, like as soon as we possibly can. So, also quite possible that the coalition will listen to them. They are political donees and lobbyists as well, after all. Okay. So, moving on to climate and energy. So, here in WA, a parliamentary inquiry is said to have put the WA government on a collision course with some of the country's wealthiest business people after discounting the idea they should be allowed to export onshore gas. Now, currently, they have to set aside 15% of onshore gas in WA into basically a rainy day fund. We store our gas in WA to prevent the possibility of any future shortage.
We out here clenching that sphincter.
That's right. Now, we're talking about the biggest players here who, you know, don't like this. People like Kerry Stokes and Gina Reinhart. They're actually they're demanding that they should be able to export more of that gas. And if they can't, that actually puts those existing gas projects at threat. They're at risk of closing down unless those rules are sort of tightened. I think that is all a bunch of huff and puff, to be honest. Those laws were brought in by the Alan Carpenter government in the aughts, like 20 years ago, or almost. So, yeah.
I've got an opportunity, so I'm going to do this joke. WA, why are you holding that fat tank of gas? Just walk away. Walk away and there'll be no more violence. Sorry, I had to.
Okay.
It was on the table.
Okay, now, not only that, though, they've also said that the discovery and size of future resources from the Perth Basin may be underwhelming, and there was a likelihood of future gas reserve downgrades. So in other words, the future finds of gas reserves may actually be smaller than what we've grown accustomed to, and we may not have that much to tap into. So, I don't know. Sort of scaremongering in a way. I mean, over east, they do have a real threat of gas running out, particularly in Victoria. I just don't think we have it here in WA.
Nah, we're still pretty fucking good. We can't contract with Ragnarok, so like our actual incoming rate, because Ragnarok does like some really base end usable amounts of refinery on board, and the fucking quantities are immense. A population of 2.5 million is a fucking joke for gas supply in terms of the Ragnarok. So I'm happy that one, that's why I was fretting so much, because I was like, yeah, if we lose the Ragnarok, we have to fucking like do it ourselves domestically, which we really can't do at a supply rate for 2.5 million. But no, like as long as we have that plus our domestic, you know, we're fucking golden.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
anyway, Vegeto's real name is.
Huh?
I'm just making a joke about it. I'm targeting an American who's a targeted individual.
Okay.
And a listener.
Oh. Well, this is the last story on climate and energy. It's rare, only 2 stories for that. But the ACTU president, Michelle O'Neill, says that green industry policies are needed to stop coal communities from becoming hotbeds for an Australian version of the politics of resentment, such as that being stoked by the Republicans and the Trump movement. So what Michelle O'Neill is talking about here is obviously every time we go and shut down a coal mine or a coal-fired gas station or whatever,
what should they feel?
Threat. That's a threat to the coal industry, of course, and you put all of these people out of work. Michelle O'Neill, rather than saying that maybe that's a bad idea, that we shouldn't be shutting them down in the first place, has instead said that, well, what we actually got to do is get these green energy projects up and running faster. So, I mean, this is the really shit.
You're not going to employ the entire fucking people of the town that are based off their entire livelihood, their entire existence is based off, the fucking industry.
They kind of think that like these occupations are completely interchangeable. Like it's just as simple as
it's like a part you can take out and plug a new one in. Yeah, no, it's in this case it's a you'll need a multi-generational fucking plan to reallocate the fucking grandchildren of these people, in some cases great grandchildren, especially with the populations, to other labor. It would be a multi-generational fucking plan. And if I was, like fucking Reichsführer, I fucking would. I'd say like, hey, look, I'm gonna give you fuckers 90 years. I'm gonna give you this 90 years, and yeah, like I'm gonna make sure your kids are educated, or at least give your kids and your kids' kids the best opportunity to be educated out of this field. But yeah, no, like again, I'm gonna say this again. What should they feel? What emotion should they feel about the position that they're in? They're right to feel resentful. Anger is right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, when they talk about the politics of resentment, it's like, okay, like, the government comes in with all of these green tyranny policies, shuts down the coal mine in your community, leaves you out of a job, leaves your family destitute. You're saying that they shouldn't be resentful?
Materialistically, you're kicking down some dude's house, raiding their pantry, and then fucking stripping out every single valuable from their place and being like, hey guys, don't be resentful though. Like you guys should just, learn to adapt to this changing environment as you stumble away with their entire fucking livelihood.
Yeah. And I mean, look, there was a time where the union said, as we say, just stop it. Don't shut them down in the bloody first place. Now it's just sort of accepted as inevitable that they're all going to shut down, that there's no point fighting it. And so instead, what we've got to do is look at, this bloody future made in Australia plan and start tweaking it so that we can hit the fast forward button on all of these green energy sites. Like, so this woman, Michelle O'Neill, she said she's critiqued the current policy because it does not contain the same game-changing supports for green iron, steel, and aluminium as it does for critical minerals and hydrogen. Green iron.
Green iron. Oh, man, that is the dumbest fucking shit ever.
I'm not sure if I've even heard that term before.
I know we went over it once. Green iron is 2 different processes. Either they try to electrowin iron, which is, by the way, the most wasteful fucking process ever. Just because the oxygen, one, iron ore, like mineralized iron, not metallic iron, comes in so many different fucking forms. So therefore, would need so many different voltages to actually efficiently refine. But iron just likes to have mineralized iron just likes to have shit burnt next to it. Basically, that's the big thing. Burnt next to it at the right temperature, and it becomes metallic iron. And the other thing is producing hydrogen gas to use as a reduction agent for iron. The problem is hydrogen gas is too light. Something like carbon or, some kind of like higher end periodic table metalloid is better than hydrogen gas, just because it doesn't have enough basically it doesn't have enough electron volts in its orbital structure to pull the oxygen off of iron efficiently. You'll need multiple hydrogens available in a really high concentration, and then when they actually debond the oxygen, they're all going to be fighting over that. They're all going to be exchanging electrons. You'll end up with free radical hydrogen, which is a pain in the ass and massively inefficient. So basically, you're talking about two very, very energy inefficient ways of refining iron. In fact, the easiest way to do it is to remove all the volatiles from coal and then burn that, crush it up into a really fine pellets or dust, and then burn that in a fucking slag slurry with it, like how our ancient ancestors were doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What am I saying? No, we do have more stories on climate and energy. Kind of lost the power of sight there for a sec. Okay, so we've got a report here from the Regional Australia Institute, and they've actually made some good recommendations, would you believe? So they said that the government can't afford a net zero target at any cost, and should work with the energy industry to ensure regional communities are supported with big renewable energy projects, and have the housing, schools, childcare, and healthcare facilities to cope with growing populations. Now, they've said that they need to encourage grow your own workforce, and that is not having to rely on fly in, fly out workers, which, obviously in Australia, we're used to that just being something in mining. It's now increasingly to do with constructing these new green energy projects, because so many of them are out in regional areas. So, yeah, I would have to agree with that. I've never liked the idea of FIFO in the first place. And I think we probably all know people who have had bad experiences with it. It's just fucking not natural to have a working cycle that runs like that. But not just that. It's like it's a further breakdown of social capital, like having people not work where they're living, because how are you supposed to actually build a functioning community in that way? So yeah, I would like that to happen. If we have to have these bloody green energy projects built out in the regions, I guess that would be a better way of doing it.
Yeah. I still see a horrendous amount of issues.
Oh, so do I. But it probably would be better if they, had a local workforce to build those facilities and projects, rather than FIFO and rather than foreign workers.
No, man, just bring in Infinity Indians. That's what it's all about. Infinity Jeet. We're out here Jeet-finiting this motherfucker.
Okay, so here is the last story on climate and energy. So there was a decision made last week on Friday by the Environment Minister, Tayeh to override her own federal department and New South Wales planning approval for a gold mine near Blaney. Now, she has cited a piece of legislation. Why have I not highlighted this in my prep? It's like Section 10S of bloody something. Why can't I find it? Hold on. This is to do with... here it is. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act. So you can probably tell from the title of that, this is about protecting Indigenous heritage. This is a federal act. It's would be nowhere near as bad as those laws that we temporarily had here in WA. Where basically, if you wanted to have like any kind of modification on your
if
farm,
you breathed on a farm, an Aboriginal had to approve it.
And the way of approving it, of course, is to give them money. That's what it was. It was just a massive rent-seeking operation. But anyway, this actually does allow the minister unilateral power to step in and say, no, based on the interests of Aboriginal heritage, I'm saying that this particular site, so in this case, it's a $1 billion gold mining project in New South Wales. I believe that would have a threat to Aboriginal cultural heritage, therefore, no. And by the way, it wasn't quite as simple as Tayeh Plibersek simply making that decision. Green groups have threatened to take this to court and exploit that Section 10S of the Act, because this is actually not the first time they've done it. This is the first time they seem to have gotten a win of this kind, that is focusing on this particular part of legislation and convincing a minister to go along with it. So, yeah, it's basically been said that these green groups are now weaponizing that section of law, and this could just simply be the first domino to fall. They're going to do it again. We know they have all sorts of tricks up their sleeve when it comes to lawfare. And it is their main tactic now, I think. Just bring people to court.
Well, again, all it requires is stuff that they have, which is like people in the elite, the resources they can provide, and a distinct lack of community support. Or awareness, for that example. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, definitely expect to see more of that. Oh, wait, sorry, one thing I forgot to mention about this was that this gold mine site actually had the approval of the Orange Local Aboriginal Land Council. So they actually said that they had no issue with it. Now, why is that? Well, they're one of these so-called Aboriginal corporations. They're the ones who are said to speak for the traditional owners of that particular area of land. And they said it's okay. Now, I don't have this in front of me, but I'll bet anything that it was because they were going to get a payout. They were going to get royalties. They were going to get money from all of this. Now, they've suffered a loss here. They're not going to get this project, therefore they're not going to get the money that they would have been handed because of threats coming from these green groups. So you see, this is one of those examples of the left eating themselves, where, who wins out? Is the Aborigines who want more Gibbs, or is it shutting down all of these projects that apparently contribute so much to emissions and climate change? Okay, let's move on to some Aboriginal news. So last week we covered what I found to be an infuriating story of the Northern Territory Police Commissioner, Michael Murphy, apologising on behalf of Territorian police for injustices committed against Aboriginals in the Northern Territory. The ABC has profiled various reactions to his apology. We went through what were the negative reactions last week, and that is the police union were fucking pissed off, as they should have been. And in fact, Michael Murphy was basically forced to resign from the police union as a result of that. But as you can imagine, the reaction from so-called Aboriginal elders has been quite something else. And they have said...
Over-exaggerated?
Yeah, well, what they've done is they have now said, okay, we're glad we've got like an apology coming from, like the state apparatus of the Northern Territory government, the territory government. But what we really need an apology for is the federal government's intervention, which was back in 2007. So that was under the Howard government. The Indigenous minister was Mal Brough, who was said to be like part Aboriginal himself. But yeah, do we remember the the intervention? Happened just before the GFC. Look, put it this way. There were reports of 6-month-old babies with STDs because they had been raped. Not kidding.
I was just going to remind everyone, the person that brought this to bear on the Aboriginal communities was the shittest of shitlib lawyers. I just want to remind everyone of that.
Yeah.
It was a bleeding heart shitlib. Yeah, who wanted to make sure they stayed out of prison because Aboriginal incarceration was really too high, and that was a big button issue for her. She saw what was going on, turned around and said, you quite literally need to take away these people's fucking agency and ability to buy like fucking alcohol. Or she went a lot further than that. She actually basically said like curfew them, lock them up, and basically only allow them to interact with like a handful of like social workers when they're in large gatherings. But obviously the alcohol and sometimes curfews and etc. was the only thing that went through. But it was a shitlib going full on fucking like cartoon fascist.
Yeah, it was a classic example of a progressive mugged by reality. Chances are she lived a very kind of, privileged, sheltered life where she had a romanticized vision of what Aboriginal people were. And then she went and she was a boots-on-the-ground lawyer and saw the reality of it. And yeah, she was the whistleblower that sort of started all of this. So anyway, let's see if I got... Okay, so this was an Aboriginal elder. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. But he said this about the intervention in 2007. He said, "It was a shock for my people. Most of my countrymen took up at midnight to travel by boat to other communities and remote homelands because of that fear." Oh, God. So now, what this guy is doing, and others in the Northern Territory, is saying, all right, we need an apology now from the federal government over this for like destroying Aboriginal sovereignty and applying the heavy hand to us. Well, John Howard actually commented on this, our former Prime Minister, and he said that the intervention was totally justified. Look, I've just got mixed feelings on this. Like, you can't really hope to change a third world people and remove their third world conditions. You just can't do that. And the government then, any government since, shouldn't be under any illusions that you can do that. You're talking about a race of people whose mean IQ is 64, or possibly even less. That's
one entire standard deviation below clinically retarded.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. So, I mean, just there was this kind of idea, like conservatives in Australia, it's very much like with blacks in America. They just say, just so long as they have the same opportunities and everything, they can rise to the same level as the rest of us. No, they can't. No, they can't. And whether it's a heavy-handed kind of militaristic approach that you take to it, or a more paternalistic one where you're just giving handouts, and so forth. Neither method's going to work. Maybe you actually did put a few people in jail back then who needed to. That would be about it. But are you actually going to solve anything long term? No. Hell no. Okay, so onto crime. Back in WA, we've still got the coronial inquest going on into the death of Cleveland. What's his name? Dodd. Sorry, mind blank there. First ever juvenile detainee to die in custody in WA. So the minister who was responsible for that, Bill Johnson, one of our very few actual ministers who became known, I guess, just because of how controversial Unit 18 was. He has defended the creation of that unit that put those juveniles in an adult prison, a wing of Casuarina prison, which is our maximum security, massive maximum security facility. So I'm glad to see someone actually not apologizing for that, because so far, everyone that they've had, people from the Department of Justice or from corrective services or the police or whatever, just keep getting up there on the stand and saying, yeah, it's all our fault and it's everything about this was wrong. But that unit shouldn't have existed. They might as well get up there and say, juveniles just shouldn't go to jail, full stop. Because if you look at the people who are protesting outside the court and everything, that's actually what they support. How many times do you hear people say, close Dondale in the Northern Territory? When they say close Dondale, they don't mean close it down and build a more humane facility. No, they just mean close it and let them all go. That's what they mean. And, what is also noteworthy is all this happened under a Labor government. Even Labor governments have to deal with the harsh reality of Aboriginal crime. Bill Johnson, who was the Corrective Service Minister, was a bleeding hard lefty, just like all the rest of them. But he saw a somewhat hardline approach as the only option to get all of this under control. So I'm glad he's not completely cucking here. He does have a responsibility, considering Labor is still in power. He can't repudiate everything. So, there is that. But it's serving somewhat as a good counterweight for all these bloody bureaucrats who've just been up there crying crocodile tears the whole time. Okay, now, in Victoria, the government's Youth Justice Bill. This is a bill that includes an amendment to raise the age of criminality from 10 to 12. That has passed the Victorian upper house. It is due to go to the lower house soon. And this is part of the overall plan to actually increase the age of criminality to 14. They're taking a gradual approach here. So for now, it's going to 12. So that means that if you're a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old in Victoria, you can commit an infinite amount of crime and not be charged for it.
And infinite amount of TikTok content, Finian.
Right.
You hearing what I'm hearing? Chinese social media famous.
Now, it's pointed out that in most Western countries, the age of criminality, does tend to be around 13, 14 or so. Australia does actually stand out as a rare example where, we've got various jurisdictions where it's 10, including Victoria. WA, I think it's 10. Northern Territory, pretty sure it's 10 as well. Okay, sure. We are different. We stand as a bit of a black sheep in that regard. But why? It's because we've got Aborigines here. I mean, they are just born into it.
Yeah.
From a very young age, like, their parents will do things like show them how to shoplift and stuff. They're taught all of this very, very young. So they start it very, very young. And you are completely removing the resources we have to actually deal with that to some extent when you make it so that it's not even possible for them to commit a crime.
Yeah. Well, guess what? The training lessons now have no risk.
Yeah.
Mama Bung can teach Baby Bung how to fucking shove the salami into his fucking board shorts without risk.
Right, yeah. And by the way, this bill will pass. I mean, if it's passed the upper house, there's no way it's going to get blocked in the lower house.
Yeah.
Labor have got the numbers. They won the last election by a landslide. It's going to happen. And yeah, expect in a couple of years' time, they will then increase it to 14. That's the plan. Okay, and finally on crime, a clubhouse in Adelaide has officially been declared a prescribed place. So that means that you're not allowed to go there, basically. So it's been described as prescribed because it's been deemed to be the headquarters of the motorcycle gang, the Descendants. Now, I'd actually never heard of this gang before, or this club before, or whatever. But they said that they were conducting unwelcome, illicit behavior at the property. No details on what that is, whether it's drugs or if they're running guns or whatever they're doing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always sort of like mixed on this bikie stuff. Like, I don't like bikies. I don't like bikie gangs or whatever. But I don't know. I always find that, like, the kind of laws that they might pass to deal with bikies can be used against us later. As in, it can be used against white nationals. Like, how do you define unwelcome illicit behavior? It doesn't necessarily have to be drugs or running guns.
Any officer's discretion, and the evidence will be fabricated later.
So yeah, always be skeptical at that, or new laws going after Islamic terrorists or whatever, because those laws could bite you in the ass further down the road. Okay, all right. Let's go to state politics. Let's go to this hilarious story coming out of New South Wales. So, I'm sure most of you know that the New South Wales Liberal Party missed the deadline to get in vital paperwork for the running of candidates in the local government elections that are coming up in October. So they estimated that there were approximately 50 winnable seats for the Liberal Party across 16 councils in New South Wales. All of those candidates, every last one of them who was running on the Liberal Party ticket, even though that never comes up on the ballot, people very rarely know what party your councillor is actually from. Nonetheless, most of them do come from a political party, and basically all of them now are going to can't run. So, how the bloody hell did this happen? How do they miss a deadline like that? So, people are pointing the finger at different people. So, the person who came up for scrutiny at first was Richard Shields. He is the New South Wales Liberal Party state director. He made a public statement about this, apologising for it, saying that it wasn't his intention and all of this. He pointed the finger at the state president, Don Harwin. And he said that Don Harwin actually volunteered to take care of these council candidates. And so basically he said to Richard Shields, don't worry, I've got this covered. I'm the one who's going to submit all of that paperwork before the deadline. So Richard Shields passed the blame to him in this press conference. And he said that calls for him to resign were premature and unwarranted. Well, he should have taken the opportunity to resign when he had it, because only hours after that press conference, the state of executive unanimously voted to terminate his position. So, yeah. So he went out on his ass. Okay, so what about this Don Harwin guy who is the state president? Well, so far, the New South Wales Liberal Party has said that it's not his fault. And Don Harwin himself has not released a public statement, at least so far as I know, even though the media, as you can imagine, have been absolutely hounding him with questions. I don't think he's actually said anything yet. So Tony Abbott, who of course is a New South Welshman, member of the Liberal Party, of course, has come out and he has said that Don Harwin should resign, that his position is untenable. So, just like when old Joe had to resign, remember it was like those first couple of Democrats in the Congress, came up and said, oh, no, he's got to resign. And then, more and more started to say the same thing. Looks like the same thing is going to happen here with Don Harwin. People are just going to say, look, even if it wasn't his fault, it's a bad look. We need to get rid of him. And it's enormously embarrassing as to, how could a major party get something as simple as a deadline wrong? It's, quite a monumental stuff up, to say the least.
I feel that the word monumental stuff up is getting so much traction. The brakes have, the fucking tread's worn off of them. There's no more bite to the word monumental fuck up.
Okay. Fair point.
You're in a monumental fuck up world. You're just living in it.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so lastly on the New South Wales Libs, Dominic Perrottet, of course, is leaving his seat. Seat of Epping, which is in a city, Sydney, I believe. And so Monica Tudhope has won the pre-selection for that. She is the daughter of the Shadow Treasurer, Damien Tudhope, and an ex-staffer for Dominic Perrottet himself. And Dominic Perrottet actually endorsed her as a future Premier of New South Wales. So, yeah, that's quite an endorsement there. All right, let's shoot around the other states. In Queensland, the Liberal Party is under some scrutiny here after it turns out that their leader, David Crisafulli, paid $200,000 in settling claims from liquidators who alleged a training company he was director of may have been trading while insolvent. So Crisafulli has so far declined to answer questions about liquidators pursuing claims against his company, which was Southern Edge Training. And it had been known to be financially struggling before he took over as sole director in 2015 and 16. Worth pointing out, though, he was only the sole director for 4 months. So don't know how much blame you can apportion to him for that, but still, that's not a good look for the alternative Premier of Queensland. Okay, Queensland Labor. So Stephen Miles is refusing to act on allegations that a Labor power broker last year sent abusive texts to former Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk. Now, his reasoning for this is that he also receives the same kind of texts from party elders. So they basically said that, like, all members of the government, all Labor MPs, from time to time will get messages from former members of Parliament giving them advice that sometimes can be abusive. So, yeah, I don't doubt that for a second. That would be a pretty normal thing. You've just got to make sure that those texts don't leak to the media. That's all. Okay,
Don't trust homosexuals. They've basically been the leak of, like, the cause. Women and homosexuals have been the cause of every single, like, political leak for, like, ever. There's a reason why the contact was called Deep Throat during Watergate.
Well, yeah, and look, I still blame the appointment of James Ashby as head of chief of staff in One Nation as, one of the reasons why they descended into the depths they find themselves in now. Okay, so I think we did mention last week that South Australia has a new leader of the Liberal Party, replacing David Spears, not to be confused with the Insiders host. So this leader, his name is Vincent Tayeh. He's only 37, which is very young for an opposition leader. And I don't know much about the guy, but looking at him, man, he just has this hell creepy face. He has this face that says, "You would be foolish to trust me." I can't put my finger on exactly why, but he just gives me that impression. Anyway, he is trying to paint a sort of rosy picture of himself, as you can imagine. Unfortunately, his smile is a bit like Tony Abbott. It just makes himself look even creepier.
Onion muncher. Crap lousy onion muncher. Do you want more skin?
So he's from the Eastern Adelaide seat of Hartley. And he's said to have gone through a brutal parliamentary apprenticeship because he did serve some time as Speaker. Don't know how brutal that would be. But no,
it wasn't the role speaking, it's what they did to him in the bathroom afterwards.
Malinauskas is serving his first term as Premier, and, South Australia is just red ribbon Labor Party territory. I don't think this guy would have any chance in the next election.
Nope.
Okay. All right. So the defamation case, I believe, is going on now against John Pesutto, the leader of the Libs in Victoria. So this is brought by the expelled member of the Liberal Party, Moira Deeming, who, of course, is suing for defamation because John Pesutto said that she was associating with neo-Nazis because she was at that anti-tranny rally that neo-Nazis apparently gate crashed. Anyway, they're trying to get people in.
We have the right to be there. We hate trannies too.
Yeah. So they're finding it difficult to get people willing to testify here. So, like, they've got one Liberal MP, Matthew Buck. He lives in the UK now, and he works as a teacher. I think he lost his seat in the last state election. They're trying to get him to come and submit evidence, and he doesn't want to. Now, Sue Christenthau, that very high-priced lawyer who is representing Moira Deeming, is questioning why he can go off on a 10-day holiday to China, as they just presented to the court, but he can't come over to Australia to give any evidence. So, yeah, I guess people just don't want to, these members of the Liberal Party don't want to be seen to be taking a side here, which I guess is understandable.
It's pretty fucking dumb.
But remember, the Liberal Party is not funding this. John Pesutto has had to fund it himself, and from donations and stuff. I think he set up like a Give, Send, Go or something, surprisingly. But yeah, what it actually shows, I think, is that a large portion of the rank and file Liberal Party membership in Victoria actually don't support him because transgenderism is an issue that he cucked on. You know, saying it's hate speech to turn up at a protest like that. So fuck him. Okay. Going to the federal Liberal Party. So the coalition will be targeting Chinese voters in the next election, particularly in key inner city seats. And they are going to be targeting them with messages emphasizing frugal economic management, tough stance on crime, and support for entrepreneurship. So they think that these are the kind of values and ideas that would most appeal to Chinese voters. And I can't remember if we covered this at the time, but apparently the Chinese voters, there was a massive swing against the coalition when it came to Chinese voters. They said it was double the national average, double the overall swing against the Liberals. So for whatever reason, the Chinese like abandoned the Liberal Party in the 2022 election. Now, of course, the coalition tends to take inner city seats, and Chinese people live in the inner cities. Now, I will bet anything that when we get to the next election, the Libs are going to run a large number of Chinese candidates. I don't have any doubt about that. Because remember, that was actually how they won the seat of Chisholm. Labor had a I think Chinese candidate, or Asian candidate anyway, who won it, and then the Liberals were able to take it from them with their own Chinese candidate. So they've already got a test result right there. They've run the trial themselves. They know it works. So dare I say that appealing to them on those messages of entrepreneurship and etc., that's not enough. You've got to actually make them believe that they themselves, the Chinese as an ethnic group, are wielding political power in Australia. How do you do that? You run a Chinese candidate. That's what they'll be doing.
Yep.
Okay. Just, I hope you're still following the prep, Nolsey, but the second link under Federal Libs, if you haven't, just click on that and just have a look at the girl in the photo. So the Libs have lined up this what's been called a star candidate. So this woman is Tasmania's Rural Woman of 2024. Belle Binder.
What?
Yeah. Now, this is not like a Miss Tasmania or Miss Rural Tasmania.
Oh, no, they paywalled me. Holy fucking shit.
But can you see her, though?
I saw it for a hot second. Now it's good. Subscribe for award-winning journalism.
So, this woman, at first I thought she must have won a beauty contest or something, because if you look at her, well, wow, she looks quite stunning, I would say.
Yeah. I was thinking, wait, no, I thought that was the journalist there for a hot second. No, that's
the candidate for the Libs. So she's running in the Tasmanian seat of Braddon.
Hot fucking damn.
Yeah, so that is actually it's held by a Liberal MP, Gavin Pearce, but he's retiring at the next election. So yeah, they've secured this star candidate, and she won Tasmania's Rural Woman of 2024,
She is a bit
Because
just for the audience. She's a bit more of a less Jewish-looking nanny named Fran.
okay, I never.
If that
I
makes
never saw
sense.
that of it.
The Americans will know about it anyway.
But anyway, she apparently pioneered an innovative farm labor scheme, and that is to do with labor hire. By the way, it's not like she redesigned a tractor or something. This is just something to do with a bloody labor hire scheme that she came up with. But yeah, she's one of the star candidates that they've got. Okay. Okay, now on gambling, these stalled plans to implement some form of restriction on gambling ads, particularly during sports events. So,
you know that 99% of gamblers stop right just before they get raped in a back alleyway by the average dude in a punter's ad?
Right, okay. That's interesting. No, I mean, look, the number one message to remember is they're profiting from your losses, meaning that you won't win, okay? If you're gambling, you are going to lose. That basic rule should always be in your head. And therefore, if you want to use it as a form of entertainment, fine. And you can justify the cost that way. But don't ever think that, you can earn a living or something off that. But anyway.
Every time there's a story about a professional gambler, it just turns out he's a trust fund baby who fucking literally is gambling away the principal of one of daddy's big loans every single fucking week. Find me one that isn't. There's your challenge, audience. There's your homework. Find me one that isn't.
Right. Okay, so anyway, the minister in charge here is actually the communications minister, Michelle Rowland. So she is being lobbied by free-to-air TV owners and sporting codes over the government's plans to limit gambling advertising to 2 spots per hour on each channel until 10 p.m. And it would also eliminate ads during children's programs. So these were the recommendations that came from the report that was spearheaded by Peter Murphy, who was the Labor MP who died of cancer in the end.
Yep.
But it seems that we've got division within the party here. So that there is, it's not official government policy yet, but, it seems like this is going to be the middle ground that Labor does take to this. But there are still a large amount of Labor MPs who just want a complete outright ban completely on gambling advertising, completely. And you might be surprised to know that they've got some unlikely allies from outside the parliament. So former Prime Ministers John Howard and Malcolm Turnbull, and also former Victorian Liberal Premier Jeff Kennett, all of them are saying that we need a complete, utter blanket ban on gambling ads. So
I'm just going to say this. It's an aside, but I'll say I've had people say I would ban things or remove things from society so that my people would be healthy and etc. And especially with say this kind of thing, would I ban advertisement of certain things? And I would say yes, because et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people saying you'd have the same nanny laws in regards to cigarettes and whatnot. I'll say specifically, and using cigarettes as an example, would anyone who's a long-term smoker enjoy the idea of new people starting to smoke or younger people starting to smoke? In my opinion and my experience, older smokers have actually been disappointed with younger generation smoking.
Yeah. And I'm pretty
they
sure
don't want people to join it. Now, they don't want to be fucked around if they've decided as an adult to use this product that's going to, demonstrably shorten their life. But none of them want it advertised. None of them want it to be shiny or cool or whatever.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I'm sure that your average poke use addict wouldn't want it advertised either. They wouldn't recommend that other people go down the same path as them. Very hard to believe that they would.
No. A lot of people instinctually have the right idea in their head. It's just, unfortunately, there's some neurons in their brain that have been grown and wired the wrong way.
So look, any announcement on possible reforms here have been delayed. The ABC reported that they believe the issue will not come before Cabinet until next week. And even then, a lot of people are basically just wanting to push it on the back burner again, meaning it'll become like, the religious discrimination laws. There just won't be a policy that Labor take to the next election. They'll just, quietly shelf it. Yeah, that's definitely possible. So a Labor MP, a backbencher called Mike Freelander, he said that Labor is currently being lobbied by the gambling industry, and he said that the move is disgusting and that Labor are being softened up by them, and that is explaining the delay that they have at the moment. Now, on the other side of this spectrum, you've got Bill Shorten, who said, hey, look, if you have a blanket ban on gambling ads, that would lead to free-to-air and regional news outlets being killed off, and then all your news would start coming from Facebook. Okay, is what he's saying here. So he said, I don't think it's bad that free-to-air TV has got to a point where gambling revenue is important to it. But you know what? Free-to-air TV is at least a voice of diversity in a world where we're getting a lot of information. So, look, I don't know how much... It seems to me like what he's saying there is that most of the money that they make is coming from gambling ads, during sporting events and stuff.
I mean, it could be the advertisements of the phone applications because, everyone in the fucking impoverished, untouchable caste Indian these days has a fucking, internet-capable phone. Worst mistake in the entirety of humanity's technological development, by the way. If you actually, if you've been on an app or if you've been on YouTube without ad blocker, etc., every second ad is a gambling ad. Sports bet, tab, Punters Co.
Yeah, I know. I very rarely watch YouTube on my phone, but when I do...
Because you're a boomer.
Well, look, usually when I do watch it, it's just on my browser, on my PC, and I've got an ad blocker. So, I get around all that stuff. But when I do watch it on my phone, it's like, I swear, 1 in 2 ads are sports bet or something. They're just really pervasive. And, I'm a guy who would never bet on a sport game. I don't watch Sportsball app at all, yet it's still reaching me. So I can only imagine what it's like for other people.
Just for the audience's context, me and old mate over here were in a certain undisclosed casino, not even in this fucking general area, and we literally didn't touch the machine, even though we were blasted completely off our minds and completely vulnerable to touching machines and fucking going to a table and etc. Neither of us did because we hate gambling that much. Now, the strippers club in the back for men, the men's strippers club, on the other hand.
I did used to play a little bit of blackjack, and I regret it because, definitely I lost more than I won, but I was never.
It's sad to hear that you got blacked by Mandingo Jack.
But yeah, look, the amount of money that I lost, I don't think would, be compensated by the entertainment value I got from it. And, you know, luckily, you know, I never got hooked on it or anything. I just stopped doing it, and that was easy for me. But it's not that easy for a lot of other people, particularly when it comes to the pokies. Those things just control their minds.
Yeah, no, it's quite literally like I think some dude was looking at like, you know, old one-arm bandits, and he actually looked at the evolution of these machines as it became more and more electronic, and eventually they became fully electrical, and like fully electrical fair,
Right.
and you know, relatively normal like the old mechanical systems. Well, not, you know, fair as fair as a mechanical system is, and
Right.
yeah,
Oh, finish
and then the electrical system starts evolving, and it starts like showing numbers that aren't there on the wheel or wouldn't be there on the wheel at all, and
Right,
it starts doing all
that's
these
what I was
other
gonna say.
psychological tricks, and they start using LEDs of a certain fucking wavelength, and it's just like, this is some fucking like poisoner in chief level fucking like, you know, psychological research, fucking applied psychological research here. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so I mean, like the old mechanical machines, you know, like when you saw the wheels turn randomly, and you'd see, you know, the pieces that would match up. Like if you got 3 cherries in a row or something, you know, you won a whole bunch of money. You would see those pieces, those, you know, fruit pieces like the cherries or lemons, whatever, spinning in front of you.
Yeah.
And that was kind of would give you an accurate idea of how likely it was that
The wheel was a physical thing with physical placements of physical symbols.
Give you an
Not to say
idea
that was fair. It was still fucking you mechanically, but
Well,
it was
it
doing
was.
it mechanically.
But if you've got a machine doing it, well, they can say start
A
flashing the
computer.
cherries in front of you.
Yeah, the wheel
more.
isn't real anymore.
So it creates the false impression that, you know, you're very likely to get those cherries rather than a lemon or whatever. And it's very different. The reality is very different. That, I think, should be illegal. They should not be allowed to do that. That's just blatant manipulation, and no, you shouldn't be allowed to do that. Okay, so education. Not too often we cover this topic. We absolutely have to today, though, because the NAPLAN results are in. And guess what? We are epically failing in it. So, this has found that at least 400,000 Australian children have fallen behind at school, and that they require catch-up tutoring to bring them up to standard. So it identified 1 in 10 children who need additional support to progress satisfactorily. Nearly a quarter of the 1.3 million children from 9,431 schools who sat the test for years 3, 5, 7, and 9 this year are deemed to be developing and working towards expectations at the time of testing. Overall, 1 in 3 students who failed baseline standards for reading and maths in this year's NAPLAN results. Wow. There's some pretty terrible numbers.
Oh, look, it's like almost giving, you know, children a shining screen of abstraction destroys their ability to reason, deduct, and also understand complex systems of education / complex concepts. It's almost like the idea that, you know, like giving children this little dopamine machine would actually make them better because they're learning technological skills. What kind of tech skills do you actually learn from using an iPad anyway? Press button? Collect candy?
Yeah. Man, yeah, you don't need to learn that stuff at school. I mean, everyone learns how to use technology in their spare time, you know? I mean, even like, you know, my family didn't get a computer till I was 16. So I'm doing a back in my day thing here.
I didn't use one till I was like 7, and I was at school. And I spent the rest of my time before that ripping things apart like a fucking nutcase.
Yeah, but my family, I was 16 when we got our first PC, and that was in large part because I begged my parents to do it. I was like the only kid at school who didn't have one.
Oh yeah, I remember your parents are kind of weird Luddites.
Yeah, they sort of are. They're a lot better than what they were, but back then, yeah, they definitely were. And what was I saying? I forgot the point I was making. Oh yeah, I remember back then, like being sort of concerned that I would fall behind in learning tech stuff, but once I got onto online chat and stuff, I taught myself how to type fast, and that came like very, very quickly to me. Most people will tell you, when they started to type, they got their speed up there pretty damn quick. So yeah, when it comes to things like that and using tablets outside of school, using mobile phones and everything, you'll learn all of those simple tricks really quick. You don't need to teach them in school, you know. You can maybe make the argument that you could teach how to code in school, learn how to code or whatever. Okay. But remember, they're failing things like maths. And, generally speaking, if you're good at maths, you can become good at coding.
If you're good at algebra, like if you can get up to like like fucking like second level integral algebra, you can pretty much do any coding in the entire fucking world. Because anything more complex than it, you can just brute force an equation on a computer to do it. But yeah, no, dude, if they're fucking failing like maths at like, what was it, the year, was it 5 to? Yeah, year 5 onwards. If you're fucking like eating a bag of dick and maths at that point, you're not going to be someone who can actually code.
Well, that's what I mean. You can't then actually move on to use like higher skills in technology. If you're bad at fundamentals of maths, well, no, it's not going to work for you. So you can't get around it. You still have to teach the basics. And the other story, I said I was going to shit on Tasmania another time. Well, Tasmania has proven to be the jurisdiction that has fallen behind the most for NAPLAN. So,
well, I mean, to be fair, that one 89-year-old who has failed year 4 over and over and over again for multiple decades, I don't think he would score well anyway.
Okay, well, look, but what they're saying here, the only Liberal government in the country is saying that they're going to have the teaching of phonics to all children by 2026. And, phonics is just the back to basics English language,
Get you hooked on phonics.
Yeah, and, they might be boring or whatever, but it worked, didn't it? And that's what they need to do. And you can't start teaching about how indigenous science is equal to Western science or some kind of crap. Now, look, and putting all that stuff aside, talking about the curriculum, our schools are just getting darker as well, okay? It's partly to do with what we're teaching them and the teaching styles and the reliance on technology, etc. But it's also just that the students are of lower IQ to begin with.
Here's more homework for the audience. Fucking make a mental note. Today is August the 20th, 2024. Make a mental note of this date, and the next time you see the headline, scores increase at, school, but, lack of whatever representation is concerning.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Look out for the headline. Right. I see it about once a month.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to disability. Of course, we're going to talk about the NDIS. Bill Shorten, the minister, is saying that he is willing to strike a deal with the federal coalition on reforming the scheme, the $40 billion a year scheme, without the backing of state governments. The reason being is that the Labor premiers, and here I can only assume he means all of them, do not support the current proposals to changing the system, quote, at this point, unquote. So we've talked about meetings that Shorten has had with his state counterparts about this. In a nutshell, the federal government wants to pass some of the burden when it comes to paying for disability care onto the states. They want to move them off the NDIS, and they want to move them onto state-funded services. And yeah, it looks like no state or territory so far is on board with that. So yeah, they might need to flesh something out with the coalition at this point. Okay, now it might surprise you, though, to know that the cost growth for the NDIS has actually slowed. So total expenses for the 2024 financial year are $600 million below the budget estimate. So the NDIS quarterly report also notes that the number of participants coming onto the scheme has slowed. It's up 10% to 661,000 people last financial year, compared to 14% the year before. Oh, and 19% the year before that. So yeah, this was a huge part of the problem, was just the amount of people who were getting on there. And a hell of a lot of them were getting on there because of autism. And we know that autism is massively overdiagnosed. So yeah, they are actually slowing so far the amount of people who are getting onto it. Okay, now
there we go. They're killing off our top one demographic. They're killing off the autists.
Now, look, disability advocates generally, people like Jordan Steele John from the Greens. It was funny. I saw him referred to as Parliament's first openly disabled senator. I was like, what do you mean openly disabled? I mean, the cunt's in a wheelchair. I mean, of course he's open. Like no one goes into Parliament like concealing their physical disability. But anyway, they're generally speaking of opposed to all of these changes. They just kind of think, who cares if we're spending a shitload of money on it? We need it to keep going. So one of these groups, or victim groups, you could say, that are upset about proposed reforms are those representing women with disabilities. So they're fearing that they could lose access to essential period care. Now, menstrual items have been defined as lifestyle related and therefore should not be funded by the NDIS. So other such lifestyle related products include vapes, gambling, and gaming PCs. So yeah, you can add that stuff to the list of other items funded by the NDIS, like prostitutes, cuddle therapy, crystal therapy, etc. So the advocates are saying that products like adaptable period underwear and tampon inserters are necessary to ensure those with physical and intellectual disabilities can manage bleeding without hurting themselves. They mentioned that, like, people can fracture a finger by inserting a tampon, for example. Okay. I was not aware that these particular types of period products existed.
Okay. Adaptable underwear is basically underwear with like a side thing, and yeah, obviously like a fucking tampon instead. It's just a fucking syringe tampon. So I've seen them a million times with other women. I mean, yeah, if you got a disability that would fucking like stop you from doing this, I mean, Velcro side underwear is fine, and yeah, but why not?
All right. Well, look, they're saying that if these changes come into place, it could lead providers, carers, and families to opt for menstrual suppression methods like sterilization or, ways of stopping your period. Okay. All right, fair enough. I mean, I guess I can see I can definitely see a better case being presented to fund those items than prostitutes.
A lot of others, yeah.
Yeah.
These are quality of life things. A lot of people say like, "Oh, prostitutes are quality of life." It's just like, no, not really. You already get a stipend. Fucking isn't a quality of life thing. There's many able-bodied people who will die never having fucked.
Okay. On to religious freedom. So I mentioned that this is a policy area that looks like Labor is just going to keep shelved. They're not going to bring a policy to this election. And this story just caught my eye. There's this campaigner. He's an LGBT plus activist. His name is James Elliott Watson. And he has called Albo gutless for abandoning the plans to scrap the exemption that allows faith-based schools to discriminate against staff and students on the basis of gender and sexuality.
Why do you care? Why do you want to work there?
Yeah.
Why do you want to be there?
Why would you want to be at a place that you call homophobic? That's amazing to me. Okay, but no, look, the reason why this caught my eye is because this guy said that he went to a Christian
school. Because he knows
school.
wider society fucking hates him. If there's one fucking, little legal standpoint, it could expand to others. Not that, he doesn't necessarily want to go into these places and pervert up being a fucking faggot himself. No, it's the idea. It's the underwhelming fucking little panic that exists inside every single homosexual. That wider society will just turn on you at any given moment. It's because it's true. This panic is true. I said this about a year ago. You're correct in this. People hate you for a reason. You are the fucking end result of societal navel gazing.
Well, look, he's actually saying that he did face persecution at his school, his Christian school. So he said he was barred from becoming a prefect after he confided in a teacher that he was, quote, struggling with his sexuality. And when he later came out publicly, he was suspended from the school. That's what he claims. Now, I would really like to see evidence of that. And, it's quite possible that the school would be able to present records on that. The guy's 29 years old, so, he would have graduated about 12 years ago. I would love to see a comment from the school on that, because I'd fucking bet anything. Okay, the prefect thing, maybe, and even then, it'd be pretty hard to say if they stopped him from being the prefect for that reason. He could have been something else. But I just cannot believe that they would have suspended him for that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're gay. All right, take a week off school. That doesn't make any sense why you would choose that form of action, if anything at all, I mean, I will definitely say that, they, discriminate against homosexual teachers. That's true. As in, they wouldn't hire them in the first place, or maybe they fire them if they find out that they're gay.
Okay, isn't this the ultimate maxim, like a liberal society, or a multicultural society, or a multi-religious society, where every religion can practice their, faith, etc., to the fullest ability of their religion, as long as it's done inside their areas and done with the full, legal consent of the law, blah blah blah. As long as they're not fucking actively hurting someone,
right?
Isn't that the fucking maxim which the entirety of 19th century Western democracies run on?
Well, look, even that that City Point high school in Queensland, they like released that value statement they wanted people like parents and that to sign that said that homosexuality was a sin. There was not a single example of that school doing something like expelling a student for being transgender or something. There was nothing like that whatsoever. They basically just wanted to put forward a value statement, and they asked for nothing more than an in-principle form of support. You know, you didn't even really have to live up to it in any way. Most of those schools don't. I mean, sometimes they ask you if you're like a practicing Catholic or whatever, and then the parents just lie on the application, but no one cares. You know, they're just like, if you pretend to be Catholic, that's good enough. So I just don't see how they would be. They would not be suspending kids for being gay. They just wouldn't. Okay. We'll wrap up just with two quick stories. So we didn't get to discuss Brittany Higgins last week. The defamation case brought by Lynell Reynolds against her is still ongoing in the Perth Supreme Court. Yeah, we've heard some interesting things. We've heard that like Linda Reynolds has basically blamed the death of Kimberly Kitching on the stress that she went through during the whole Mean Girls saga. So that involved Christina Keneally, Penny Wong, and what's the other woman's name? Gallagher, the Mean Girls.
Katie Gallagher.
Yeah. So what this was about was, when the allegations of the rape first occurred in Parliament, Kimberly Kitching, who's from Labor, believe it or not, I mean, when you see what's written about her, you'd swear she was actually a member of the Liberal Party. But she was friends with Linda Reynolds, and she was said to have tipped Linda Reynolds off about how the Mean Girls were going to weaponize that issue and, threaten to bring her down as defense minister, as she was back then. She then said that Kitching was subject to severe bullying from those Mean Girls for daring to, tip off Linda Reynolds over all of that and for being against weaponizing that issue. And then later on, she died of a heart attack. Leave it up to everyone else to decide
not related.
what caused that. I don't know if you can inflict a heart attack in someone like that, but I don't know. Anyway,
man.
Yeah, I guess. So anyway, someone who did give evidence in the court was Scott Morrison, the former PM, and he actually said that while all of this was going on, that he feared for Linda Reynolds' life. He said that he believed she could well be suicidal. Remember, she did take medical leave because she had a heart arrhythmia that, could have been brought on by all that stress. But apparently, just everyone around her said she was in a very, very dark mental state and was not really able to cope with the public pressure that was on her at that time. And it was to such an extent that Scott Morrison thought he had no other choice but to demote her. Because remember, he gave defense to Peter Dutton in the end. And then at the 2022 election, Linda Reynolds was still in the Senate. She's not anymore. But she was apparently devastated and broke down crying when she found out that she had not secured any shadow ministry for the coalition after the coalition were defeated in 2022. Now why is it that, like I'm mentioning all of this stuff? Well, remember, Linda Reynolds is suing for defamation, saying that she suffered emotionally, financially, and I guess physically as well as a result of defamatory statements that Brittany Higgins and her partner David Shiraz made against her. And going by the kind of testimony that we have heard so far, that certainly seems true. Okay, final story. the city of Melbourne is going to ban e-scooters. So
I wonder
the council
why.
recently had a vote on this. They have been deemed to be unsafe. A lot of people have just been using them recklessly, slamming into fucking people and, darting across roads and shit when they shouldn't be. I know that because I've seen it happen. But also, I think it's because of
I
those
should take
bloody...
you up here one day, Finian. I should take you to the land of the free roaming fucking lithium lipo battery grenade with the hipster faggot on
I was
top.
just about to mention that. I was about to mention the lithium batteries because apparently a number of large-scale fires and property damages have been
Do you know how
blamed
many
on the
fucking
lithium
burnout?
battery.
By the way, for our Perth viewers, would you like to see the actually after a long weekend or just a nice weekend, go down to Scarborough, and look at look at those little purple faggoty looking bikes, and see how many smashed helmets there are, and also see how many how many of them are cracked in half over a curb where there's carbon scorch marks and soot marks on the curb. You'll find at least 2.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, they've been rolled out in Melbourne a lot longer than they have here in Perth. So I can only imagine, and obviously Melbourne's a much bigger city, so I can only imagine the kind of trouble that they've been having with them thus far. But yeah, I suspect that this is now probably going to spread around the country, and good, because those e-scooters give me the shits. Okay, well, that was our final story for you. So thank you for tuning in to what was episode 227. We will endeavour to bring you an episode next week after 7 days, hopefully. Check us out at theracer.biz, and we'll see you soon.